high above the fractured skies of wartime Europe, where clouds moved like slow ghosts and engines roared like distant thunder, a single American fighter plane cut silently through the cold air. It was early morning, the kind of morning where the sun hesitates before revealing the horrors of war beneath it. The aircraft was an F4U Corsair, its dark camouflage blending perfectly with the winter sky, making it almost indistinguishable from the clouds themselves. Inside the cockpit sat a young American pilot, alone, alert, and calm, his oxygen mask fogging slightly with every controlled breath. He had been flying patrol for hours, scanning the horizon, expecting nothing more than empty skies and radio static. World War II had taught pilots one brutal truth: that danger never announced itself. As the Corsair climbed higher, the air grew thinner, the engine louder, and the world below faded into a gray blur of snow-covered land and distant smoke. Then suddenly, something moved. Far ahead, just beneath a layer of broken clouds, 9 aircraft appeared. They were flying in tight formation. German aircraft, perfectly aligned, confident, unchallenged. The pilot's heart rate spiked, not from fear, but from opportunity. 9 enemy planes, unaware, unalerted, and exposed. The American pilot slowed his aircraft slightly, easing back on the throttle, allowing the Corsair to melt into the sky. The sun sat behind him. The clouds hid him. The camouflage erased him. To the German pilots, the sky was empty. Inside one of the German planes, a pilot scanned left and right, his eyes trained to detect motion, not silence. Nothing. Another German pilot adjusted his goggles, squinting into the sun, irritated by the glare but unconcerned. They believed the airspace was clear. They were wrong. The Corsair descended slowly, like a predator folding its wings before a strike. Every movement was calculated. Every second mattered. The American pilot checked his guns, loaded, ready. His finger hovered near the trigger, but he waited. Patience was the deadliest weapon in the sky. The German formation continued forward, engines droning in mechanical harmony. Unaware that death was drifting directly above them, the Corsair dropped lower, closer, still unseen. Then, suddenly, one German pilot shouted into his radio, "I can't see him, a broken bar. Do you see anything?" Another voice replied, confused, "No contacts, a broken bar. Sky is clear." The irony was cruel. The enemy was already within firing distance. The Corsair's nose dipped, the crosshairs aligned. Time slowed. In that moment, the American pilot wasn't thinking about glory, medals, or history. He was thinking about survival. He squeezed the trigger. The Corsair erupted with fire. Machine guns screamed. Tracers ripped through the air like burning needles. The first German aircraft exploded in a flash of metal and flame before its pilot even understood what was happening. Shock tore through the formation. Radios crackled with panic. Where did that come from? Another German plane was hit, its wing shredded, spiraling downward in smoke. The Corsair climbed sharply, disappearing back into the clouds before anyone could lock onto him. To the Germans, it was madness. An invisible enemy. An attack from nowhere. They turned sharply, breaking formation, eyes wide, scanning desperately. "I can't see him." He vanished. The sky had become a nightmare. The Corsair reappeared seconds later, diving again from a different angle. Another burst. Another aircraft damaged. The Germans fired blindly, bullets tearing through empty air. Fear replaced discipline. Confusion replaced strategy. The American pilot stayed calm, maneuvering with precision, using clouds like walls, sunlight like a weapon. This wasn't a dogfight, it was a hunt. The Corsair struck again, then vanished again. One German pilot bailed out, parachute opening like a white flower against the gray sky. Another aircraft collided with a wingman in the chaos. The formation was shattered. The Corsair climbed once more, fuel running low, ammunition nearly spent. The American pilot knew when to leave. He radioed his position. Mission complete. Below him, the remains of a once perfect German formation fell toward the earth. Silence returned to the sky. As the Corsair flew home, the pilot finally allowed himself a breath. He had survived. They had never even seen him. Later, German reports would describe the attack as impossible. An enemy aircraft that appeared and disappeared like a ghost. Pilots would repeat the same phrase again and again. "I can't see him." History would remember it as one of those moments where technology, timing, and courage aligned perfectly. A single camouflaged Corsair, 9 enemy aircraft, and a sky that chose sides. The German formation was no longer a formation but a scattered collection of frightened pilots trying to survive an enemy they could not see. Smoke trails curved across the sky like signatures of panic, each one marking a pilot's desperate attempt to escape a threat that seemed supernatural. Inside his cockpit, the American Corsair pilot circled wide, high above the chaos, eyes locked on the broken enemy below. He knew the most dangerous moment was it now. Surprise had been achieved, but surprise never lasted forever. The German pilots had begun firing into the clouds, bullets ripping holes through empty sky, hoping fear alone might drive the invisible attacker away. One German pilot rolled his aircraft hard left, shouting into the radio that he saw movement near the sun. Another screamed that he was hit, his engine coughing violently. The Corsair pilot reduced his throttle, letting his aircraft slow just enough to blend once more into the grey-blue world. From above, the enemy looked small. From above, control returned. The Corsair dove again, this time faster, the wind screaming against the canopy as gravity pulled him downward like a thrown knife. The guns opened fire. A German plane shuddered, then burst into flames, its nose pitching down as the pilot fought desperately for control. There was no time for heroics. The Corsair pulled up sharply, narrowly avoiding debris that flashed past his wings. Behind him, German pilots finally spotted a shadow. 3 above us. But by the time they turned their aircraft, the Corsair was already gone, swallowed by cloud and sun. The German commander tried to regain order, barking commands, demanding discipline, but the sky refused to obey. Fear does not listen. 2 German aircraft collided during a sharp evasive maneuver, metal tearing metal, sending both spinning toward the earth. Inside his cockpit, the American pilot felt a grim silence. Victory in the air was never clean. There were no cheers, only calculation. He checked his ammunition. Less than half remained. Fuel was dropping faster than expected. He had minutes, not hours. The Corsair climbed again, higher than before, using altitude like a shield. Below, the remaining German pilots regrouped loosely, eyes burning, fingers tight on triggers, searching for redemption. One German pilot locked onto a false reflection, firing wildly until his guns jammed. Another mistook a cloud shadow for the enemy and nearly stalled trying to chase it. The Corsair pilot watched patiently. The sky was teaching its lesson. Then he struck again, a short burst, clean, precise. Another German aircraft fell away, trailing black smoke like a dying breath. Radio chatter exploded with disbelief. How is he everywhere? We can't track him. He disappears. The Corsair pilot felt the tremor of his guns through the frame, a reminder that his machine was powerful but not immortal. A German pilot finally managed a lucky shot. Bullets struck the Corsair's wing, tearing through metal, jolting the aircraft violently. Warning lights flickered. The American pilot gritted his teeth, correcting the roll, refusing panic. Pain flashed through his shoulder as the aircraft shook, but control remained. He climbed hard, escaping once more. This was no longer dominance. This was survival. The Corsair hid inside a thick bank of clouds, engine reduced to avoid sound carrying too far. Inside the cloud, the world vanished. There was no up or down, only instruments and faith. Below, German pilots circled helplessly, firing at nothing, nerves stretched to breaking. One pilot whispered into the radio, his voice barely steady. "It's like fighting air." The Corsair emerged suddenly from the cloud edge, sunlight exploding around him. The final attack came fast. One German plane took hits across the fuselage, its pilot ejecting moments before impact. Another broke formation entirely, fleeing east, abandoning the fight. The Corsair pilot didn't chase. He couldn't. Fuel was critical. Ammunition nearly gone. His mission had reached its limit. He pulled away, climbing steadily, watching the battlefield shrink beneath him. The remaining German pilots didn't follow. They couldn't. They didn't know where to aim. As the Corsair flew west, radio silence filled the cockpit. Only the engine remained, steady and loyal. Behind him, the sky closed its wounds, clouds drifting back into place, erasing evidence of the battle. On the ground, German command would later struggle to understand what had happened. Reports conflicted, numbers didn't add up. Radar showed nothing unusual. Pilots spoke of shadows, sun glare, clouds that attacked. The phrase appeared again and again in their debriefings. "I can't see him." For the American pilot, the return flight felt longer than the battle. Every vibration felt suspicious. Every gauge was watched like a heartbeat. When friendly airspace finally appeared, relief washed over him slowly, cautiously. He landed hard but safely. Ground crews rushed forward, staring at the bullet holes carved into the Corsair's wing. Someone whistled. Another shook his head in disbelief. 9 enemy aircraft, 1 pilot, 1 Corsair. The pilot removed his helmet, hands still trembling, not from fear now, but from release. He said nothing. There were no words that could explain fighting an enemy who never truly saw you. That night, as reports were written and maps updated, the story began to spread. A ghost in the sky, a fighter that vanished at will, an attack that shattered certainty itself. But the war was not over. The war did not pause to reflect on what had happened in the sky that day, but the men who survived it would never forget. Across German airfields, mechanics and pilots gathered around damaged aircraft, staring at bullet holes that made no sense. They argued over angles, over shadows, over how a single enemy could strike from everywhere at once. No radar contact, no warning, only fire. German intelligence tried to piece the encounter together, drawing lines on maps that led nowhere. The official report described it as an unexpected aerial engagement under poor visibility conditions. The pilots used different words. They called it haunting, they called it impossible, they called it invisible. Meanwhile, the American Corsair sat quietly on the tarmac, patched, refueled, and ready, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. The pilot was questioned, debriefed, and finally dismissed with a nod of approval and a simple instruction: get some rest. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw tracers cutting through cloud, saw planes falling, saw men who never knew what hit them. He reminded himself of the rules of war: see first, strike first, survive. The next morning, newspapers would not print his name. There would be no photographs, no medals announced. That was how air war worked. Stories traveled faster than truth. Within days, Allied pilots began to hear rumors: a Corsair that used clouds like camouflage, a pilot who attacked without being seen. The myth grew with every retelling, some exaggerated, some simplified, but the core remained unchanged. The enemy never saw him. Back on the German side, training manuals were quietly updated. Pilots were warned about sunlight attacks, cloud concealment, and altitude advantage. Yet warnings could not erase fear. Every cloud now looked suspicious. Every glare of sunlight felt like a threat. The sky had changed. Weeks later, the American pilot was back in the air. Another mission, another patrol, different location, same war. But something was different. The confidence was sharper now, tempered by knowledge rather than arrogance. He knew invisibility was temporary. Luck always ran out. On this mission, the sky was crowded. Allied bombers filled the air, escorted by fighters. German resistance was heavier. The Corsair took fire early, a reminder that the enemy learned fast. But the legend followed him. German pilots hesitated. They scanned longer. They second-guessed shadows. Hesitation was enough. The war in the air became a battle of nerves as much as machines. Technology mattered, skill mattered, but belief mattered most. The belief that the sky was no longer safe. For the American pilot, the fight continued until fuel, fatigue, and fate finally pulled him from combat. He survived the war. Many did not. Years later, long after engines stopped roaring and airfields turned silent, historians would uncover fragments of the story: combat logs, radio transcripts, contradictory reports, one American pilot, multiple enemy aircraft, a sudden collapse of formation. They debated numbers, they debated aircraft types, but no one debated the outcome. A single moment had rewritten expectations. Modern air combat would learn from it: stealth, surprise, position, the idea that what you cannot see is often what kills you. The Corsair itself would become a legend of the war, praised for its power, speed, and brutal effectiveness. But the story was never about the machine. It was about the moment. A pilot alone in the sky, clouds closing like curtains, enemies flying confidently beneath him, and a decision made in silence: to wait, to strike, to disappear. The phrase would echo through training rooms, war rooms, and memoirs. "I can't see him." It was not a complaint, it was a realization. War had entered a new phase, where invisibility was a weapon, where fear traveled faster than bullets, where the sky itself could betray you. On that day, high above a burning continent, the clouds chose a side, and history,